Hello, hello. Hello,
Welcome,
everyone.
everyone.
Welcome. Come on in, come on in. Come on in. Tag a friend, like and share this post to your page. Thank you for joining us. If you're just getting here, you have reached the live of Writers Against Racism Battlefield of the Mind, hosted by The Real Ebb and Flow, which is us. And we're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube. So go ahead and let us know who you are. Let us know where you're joining us from.
Yes.
And let us know what you're expecting to gain from this discussion, because racism is a huge topic, not just a topic, but a huge issue that deserves all the attention it can get until we don't have to deal with it anymore. So come on, join on in, tag some people. We're happy to have you here.
Yes. Hello, everybody.
Hey, hey, hey.
How y'all doing tonight?
And it's not just us. We have an amazing panel of people that I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, but I cannot express how blessed I feel to know these individuals.
Yes.
Writers Against Racism brought us together, but I feel like this is like my family.
Right.
I love these people. So when I bring you guys on, I want you to really brag about how great you are, because you are great. Let people know who you are and what you do.
That's right.
Wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and start bringing on our panelists.
Yes.
Let's get this ball rolling. All right. Go ahead and mute your mic. Let me do the mute. All right. Awesome. And we're just going to start from the top, allowing everybody to just go ahead and introduce themselves. Just going from the top left to right. So, Miss Cleo, you're up.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Cleo Scott Brown, and I'm from Goose Creek, South Carolina, which is, other words, Charleston, South Carolina. And I am the author of two books. One is called Witches to the Truth, and the other is Raceology 101. And I've been writing and talking and doing bias workshops and talking about race voting in class for about 10 years now. And so I'm just really excited to be a part of this wonderful group and to be able to share a little old school wisdom and to be among all of these brilliant young people.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me all right. My name is Vivian Olden, and I am the author of Stumbling Through Adulthood. It is an interactive journal that talks about my journey and through entrepreneurship and learning how to manage as a minority woman in the corporate world and ultimately as an entrepreneur. I'm so excited to be here to bring the millennial perspective on how race plays a role in how we navigate through the world. It's been a real honor to be asked to speak on many, many different panels because of publishing my interactive journal and the way that it helps people of all races take some introspection about how they show up in the world as it relates to any being a person of color.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Keith Giles. First of all, I'm just really excited that Cleo would put me in the group of the young people category. So happy to be among the young people. And I'm the author of the series of books called Jesus Un. You can't see them all, but there's so far I have 5 books in the series. The newest one is coming out in March called Jesus Unforsaken, Substituting Divine Wrath with Extravagant Love. And what I kind of say is boiled down what I do is I try to introduce Christians to Jesus, which is hard to do because most of them think they already have it figured out. But that's what I've been trying to do anyway. My wife, Wendy, and I also work with a group called Peace Catalyst International here in El Paso, Texas. And we're launching a new podcast for Peace Catalyst International, also coming up in March. And I'm just honored to be here. Thank you guys for inviting me, and excited to talk about this very important topic.
My name is Javon, or JP Franks. I am the host of Journeyman's Journal podcast, and I'm a lover of storytelling, whether that is through poetry, which I enjoy writing, long form fiction, which I also dabble in the science fiction world. And I like true life stories as well. My podcast is a journey from inner places to outer spaces in seek of insights and inspirations. So I speak to a variety of guests, whether they are artists, engineers. I spoke to somebody who is a community activist here in Tampa, or not even really an activist, but he wanted to start a park. He wanted to create a park in his community, and ended up finding not just one, but several lost and covered up graveyards here in the Tampa Bay community. So that was one of my favorite episodes, and one that I looked forward to doing. But I enjoy learning about people's journey and sharing my own as a creative person, as somebody who has mental health challenges, as somebody who's dealing with the realities of racism. And in my 9-to-5 life, I also work for a labor union. So for me, activism is a lifestyle. I believe in the power of people to change the dynamics in our communities. And that's one of the reasons I love this group in particular, because we've come from a lot of different backgrounds, but can speak with, we're kind of like a chorus. We have different voices, but they come together to create something beautiful. And my podcast is available on all major platforms, searching Journeyman.
Hello, hi, my name is Sophia Johnson, and I have to always say I was born in Jamaica and raised in Boston and New York. I'm a mother of two, and I have my first book of poetry that came out, Truth is Consciousness. And this is really important too, because it's also important that you know that it's never too late. So even though I feel like I'm a late bloomer, it's never too late, right? So I love writing poetry. It's such a form of expression and information. And I just love connecting with people. I love being here with you guys. And as far as racism go, I think I come from it more from a mother's point of view and an immigrant point of view. And I think that's a very important voice to have. It's an important part of the conversation, because we don't want to, especially in this pandemic, we don't want to leave our children out. But I'm just happy to be amongst you guys.
Hello, everyone. My name is April Evans, and as you see, my shirt says that I am a proponent of humanized Blackness. So let me tell you a little bit about me. The name of my business is Women Leaders LLC. All consonants, no vowels, Women Leaders LLC. And the vision of this organization, my organization, is to empower every single woman on the planet, that's every woman on the planet, to create, fix, and take over her world. And we do that through practical teaching. There is biblical foundational teaching along with easy to grasp road-tested principles to make sure that you take control of your world right now by making decisions that reflect the life that you want to have. So that is a little bit about me in a nutshell. And that is my dog that you hear in the background. We have a whole lot going on over here. But lastly, I'll share this with you. This is my workbook entitled Women in Leadership. So what I do is I help women, particularly women that look just like me, navigate through corporate America, because there aren't too many Black women in corporate America in C-suites that are able to lay out a path for us to navigate successfully through the world of promotions and just get into that C-suite in corporate America. So I've created a roadmap to help women navigate successfully in corporate America. And that's the angle that I hope to bring tonight with Writers Against Racism. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Marcus, aka Black Phoenix. I am a regional as well as national award spoken word artist, as well as newly became Slam Master of upstate South Carolina area. We're from Lynchburg, Virginia, now living in Greenville, South Carolina. I've released one CD it's called From the Ashes, but I'm not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about, which is more my focus for my spoken word, which is more about um, social injustice as well as mental health.
Hello, everybody. My name is December Rose. I'm so happy to be again on the panel with everyone. I'm from Washington State, but I have been in South Carolina now for about 18 years. So I claim to be a South Carolinian now. But I am an author. Recently released a book called The Church Can Go to Hell. Just before that book, I released a book called God Does Not Want Your Bill Money. So if you don't know where it's going with those two books, I try to dispel some of the drama, the chaos, the confusion in the midst of the church in general. Where it concerns this conversation tonight, I just come as a messenger of the Lord and someone who lives in a Black body with Black skin, with Black experience as a woman, as a mother, and as a human being. I offer, always love, light, and salt that I would like to bring to the conversation tonight. And thank you, Ebb and Flow, for having me again with all these wonderful people on the panel tonight.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So as you guys can see, we have a very diverse panel of people with a wide range of experiences that I'm sure everyone can learn something here. But we came tonight to talk about the issues of race. Um, also, just to let you guys know, we are going to be giving away some of those awesome books that you all saw. What I need for you to do in order to get that book or get one of these books is to like and share this video. And also just we're going to post a group called Writers Against Racism. In this group, there's lots of resources there to help you navigate the issues that we're facing and find ways that you can help your community. There are links posted there and websites that you can visit. What we need you to do is just go into the group and just let us know you're there. And we're gonna pick some winners to get some of these awesome books. Also, post your comments, post your questions. We're gonna be doing a thing called popcorn words. Let's see, somebody's mic is. Let me mute the mic here. Just a second. Not quite sure where the feedback is from. Just a second. Okay. But we're gonna be playing a little game of sorts. It's called popcorn words, and we're gonna throw out some words, a word to you, and we just ask that you put in the comments what does this word make you feel when you hear it? What's the first thought that comes to mind when you hear these words? What I've noticed is that in a lot of communication with our peers about the issues that are going on, sometimes these words cause a divide and not really meaning to, but people's perception of them hinders the conversation a little bit. So I just want you to put, what's the first thing that comes to mind? And the first word I'll start with is the word equity. The word equity. If you could just put in the comments, when you hear this word, what does it make you feel? What does it make you think? I'm going to bring our group in to speak on the word equity. Just a second. Let's bring everybody back, please. Mute your mics if you're not speaking, just to eliminate some of that feedback. Okay, perfect. So, group, what are your comments on equity? And especially Vivian and Miss Cleo, I would love to hear your perspective on these.
When it comes to the word equity, I think that's an awesome word for us to start with, because with my nonprofit Behind the Leaf, we focus 100% on financial equity, because we've raised $15 million 6 years ago, and we connect women business owners with investors and funders. Because when I think of the word equity, I'm thinking of having an opportunity and having access. For in my area, only 1% of minority women are getting access to VCs and funding to grow and scale their businesses. And what I want to see when I use the word equity is I want to see that number increase. I want it to increase. Let's get crazy. Let's increase it to 5%. We want these businesses to be able to grow so that they can provide jobs for others, and so that they can provide flexibility in their workforce. So that's what equity means for me. It means creating an environment where women business owners have an opportunity to connect with angel investors and funders who understand why they need the extra support.
Well, when I think about equity, I mostly think about how often people get equity and equality mixed up. And there is a really nice illustration that makes it clear. They show equality, and it shows some boys, and they're all different height, and then they're all standing on the same block to try to see over the fence. Of course, the shortest child still can't see over the fence, but he has an equal sized block. So that's equality. Equity is when you recognize that there have been some people or certain groups or that have not been given an equal access. And so equity may mean that one person needs a 5-foot block to stand on, where another person might need only a 2-foot block to stand on. So we need to always just make sure that we don't confuse equality and equity. Equity means something totally different, but is much more meaningful.
When I hear the word equity, I think a lot about systems. And so I just mentioned my 9-to-5 work with a labor union, and the people that I work with most are adjunct professors. And for those that don't know, more than half of faculty at colleges and universities now are actually taught by adjuncts, or what the university thinks of or colleges think of as part-time employees. The reality is there's no such thing. When a professor goes to teach a class, they have to have the same credentials as a full-time faculty member. But in some cases, they're teaching that same exact class, whether it's particle physics or art history or philosophy or French foreign language, whatever it is. They're teaching that class for, let's say, $2,500, $2,200. And but when we look at, why is that happening? There's a whole lot of systems in place that, from with the state of Florida, it's really about funding. The legislature is not funding the schools in a way that allows them to transition people from adjunct teaching to full-time teaching. Adjunct teachers are getting fewer classes because with the Affordable Care Act, they mandated that if anybody works more than 38 hours or 32 hours, they have to be given benefits. So instead of giving people healthcare benefits, they started giving people fewer classes. As we are fighting for more rights, higher pay, better benefits for adjuncts, what they need is very different. Somebody teaching in the math department needs something different from somebody teaching in the music department. And these systems are all complicated in ways. So figuring out, back to Ms. Cleo's point, who needs one box and who needs two boxes? Who needs healthcare is one of their benefits. Who needs to get paid more if their classes are getting stacked up? So when we talk about equity, it forces us to really look at the systems in play and how they're distributing resources and where those resources really need to be going.
I would like to add, I like what you said about systemic. I do, when I think about the word equity, I think about structural. But in addition to that, I think the one caveat to me that makes equity different from equality is that equity requires understanding, where equality does not. So equality is simply about giving everyone the same thing, regardless of the circumstances. Everyone gets the same hand. But that does not require a level of understanding if you want to, let's say, distribute equality. But with equity, yes, there is a sense of justice. Yes, there is a sense of fairness. But along with that comes an understanding for every single person's situation. So whether you're taking into account location or education or the structures that are in place, the infrastructures that are in place, you insert a level of understanding based on all of those circumstances to be able to give a person what they need to thrive successfully in this particular environment or in this arena. As opposed to equity, we don't have a sense of understanding. We're just giving everyone the same thing without having much thought as to what you may need to thrive in this specific situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So and so thinking about equity, what are some of the, I feel like the mental aspect of racism and feeling like you're unable to achieve it contributes to the issues that we have with equity as well, because like you said, those opportunities are out there, but what hinders people from taking the steps to grasp that opportunity? Any thoughts on that? I know, Vivian, you do a lot of, you have scholarship or grants, education available to people and different things like that. Do you feel like people take advantage of what you offer? Um,
I think that that's such a wonderful question because, yes, my nonprofit, we contain our giving and our connections in our Flourish Media Conference, which takes place in February. It's actually happening February 19th and 20th. If you know of a small business owner who could benefit from a $1,000 grant, then please, by all means, encourage them to participate. So, we provide 3 different $1,000 small business grants, but we also have a private Facebook group where we actively post and share grant opportunities, funding opportunities. Sometimes it's $5,000 for a new business. Sometimes it's a $100,000 pitch competition. But we make sure that we share that information because, to answer your question, no, there is not enough education and access when it comes to this particular area for sure, because the frustrating thing that I run into is that when I bring up the fact that women and minority women are not getting access to funding, the first thing they say was, well, you can get a credit card or you can go to the bank and get a loan. Well, they go to the bank and they get a loan, but they're having to talk to a person who is judging them in such a way where the reality is the numbers are 1%. I'm not making that up. You can go and look. And I think we would be remiss if we don't acknowledge the fact that the only difference between a lot of these businesses is that the people asking for the money are minorities. And that seems to be the continuous thing that's keeping them from finding their success. I've also gone to many, 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 many VCs and programs and financiers. I have these conversations every day about creating this place of collaboration. And I'm told that, diversity is the plan now. Diversity is the thing that we want to focus on. And we have a program that covers that. We created something that does that. But I would like to bring up the thought process of how impactful can your diversity department, diversity initiatives be if the people who are putting together the program would never benefit from that program. There's so many very well-intentioned individuals who have a heart for diversity and creating equal opportunity, but they themselves do not have a network that reflects the people who actually need these things. And if you don't have that network, how do you know how to create equity? As we were just saying, because you don't have that extra experience and knowledge to draw from so that you're speaking to these people in a way that the program actually works.
right.
I have a quick thought on this equity concept. If you've been anywhere in the world in front of any kind of news, you might have heard about this whole thing with GameStop. Mm-hmm. Anybody heard about that? Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about when you said, what is it that keeps people from pursuing this equity? When I think of equity, I'm thinking of value. Miss Cleo, she mentioned this about, those levels, the equity versus the equality. I'm thinking of GameStop, where you have people who control the levers that say, I'm going to bet against the value of this. Mm-hmm. So about 3 weeks or so ago, the GameStop stock was worth about $18. Okay. Today it's worth almost $400. Mm-hmm. And it's been going up and down, but it's still over 1,000% more, than what it was worth 3 weeks ago. And that's because the little guy betted for it and the big guy betted against it. And for some reason, this is registering in my spirit concerning when we're talking about equity, because you have a system that bets against my worth because of my skin. Okay. And because they devalue me or you based on my skin, they put systems in place to hold that value down artificially. Okay. So a lot of people don't have access, and some people do. But my skin, okay, they place a value on my skin, and then they bet against me succeeding. What they did with the stock was bet against it succeeding, bet against it getting higher. And they didn't even buy the stock. And, I'm not going to get too into the weeds, but they didn't even buy the stock to do this. They borrow it, bet against it, then sell it back. So they don't, it costs them nothing to profit off of the failure of that business. Okay. And there's the thing about the skin that I'm in. It costs them nothing to profit off of me, off of holding me down artificially, but they get all the gains. And so when we march and when we rise up and we protest, and now I gotta, this is where you see the National Guard, the whoever come in on us, but don't do nothing with folks storming the Capitol. Right. Okay. So what did you see? What happened when the people who are in charge got challenged on artificially betting against this? Well, what happened? Robinhood, TD Ameritrade, whatever them other ones are, stopped. They blocked people from buying the stock. So they artificially kept that stock from rising in value, not because it couldn't, because they decided it shouldn't. And why did they decide that it shouldn't rise in value? Because they had something to gain from it being artificially low. They had something to gain. They have something to gain from my son not being able to get the job that their son can get, even though he's more qualified. They have something to gain from my daughter not being able to advance or go to a certain college or whatever, even though my daughter is more qualified. There's something to gain. This is why they stopped people from buying the stock. And then when all this uproar happened, they had to back up off of that and open it back up high. Because now, just like the draws got snatched off this country on January 6th and everybody saw that systemic racism is real, now the draws got snatched off Wall Street and they're like, oh, so this is not a free market, then is it? Because you can make billions of dollars betting against it, but I can't make a couple 100,000 betting for it. And this is what I think about when I think about equity and equality. You want to hold my value down artificially. And if I protest, you're the one that's holding the mechanisms and the systems and the measures and the weights and the balances and the checks. And you get to decide whether or not I can rise up or not. Until someone within your own system and equal power, okay, steps in and says, this is not right. The government will have to step in, okay? It wasn't women that gave women the right to vote. It was white men that gave women the right, someone that's in the realm of authority and power, okay? It wasn't black people that freed black people from slavery. It was the president, and then people didn't even go for it at first, and some of them didn't get, you know what I'm saying? Then there had to be information that was dispersed to let them know that they were free. They didn't even know they were free. Because you have to be in control of the systems that manage these things. And until, like my sister said, Vivian, until you are sitting at the table where decisions are being made, where these diversity panels are being put together, okay, it don't change. That's why we fight for access.
Absolutely. That was actually my next word. So you kind of spoiled it a little bit, December, because the next word was power. Power. What does that feel? What does that generate? What kind of feeling does that generate in you, in this climate, in your community, and just in whatever you're involved in the workplace, at school? Power.
Oh, okay. So I want to take a stab at it,
Control.
and I know control. I think of influence. So whoever has power has influence. They have influence over decisions that will be made in the future. So when you think about people that have power, they have influence over decisions. And not only that, just to break it down even biblically, come on, December, biblically, power is the ability to choose. When you take away my power, you have just taken away my ability to choose. You have just made my world smaller. The more power I have, the more influence I have, the bigger my world will be, because now I have the option, I have choice, and choice leads to freedom. So when I think about power, not only am I thinking about, influence, but innately God gave me power. He gave me the ability to choose, which is where my power lies. And when you think about racism, they try to take away our power because they want to take away our ability to choose our way in and choose our way out. So that's what I think about when I think about power.
Absolutely. Anybody else have thoughts on the word power?
What April said.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And so Miss Cleo, I'll let you answer this. How do we go about achieving having influence and power in our communities? Miss Cleo, can't hear you. Let me unmute you.
Need to unmute myself.
Go.
I was thinking about when you asked the first question about power and how more powerful I felt as a 12-year-old, a teenager, than I see teenagers around me today feeling, because at 11, I'm actually helping the seniors learn how to pass the test in order to register to vote. So I'm over there every day checking papers and helping them, with their exams, and we're doing things, and I'm helping to organize, and college students are coming back and educating, and it felt more powerful because we were actively engaged in making a change. But the one thing that I remember most, because I recorded my father's story, who was a civil rights activist, in my book, Witness to the Truth. And he said, the main problem is that the people have been trained to believe that they are powerless. And so, like when you saw in Georgia and the election, the first round, before they went to the Senate election, they were being taught that they weren't as powerless as they thought they were. And so I think that's where we have to start with. We have to start convincing people that you really do have power. I mean, if you're like 60% of the population in North Charleston, you could actually do something if you organize. So it's all about believing first, then organizing second, and then you have to have people who are from all different backgrounds. And what I mean by that, you must have strategists, you must have foot soldiers, you must have social media people. So you got to have them all, because they are all necessary to move the thing forward. You got to have somebody who make people angry or rile them up. And then you got to have someone who say, this is what you do with that anger. And so it's all about organizing and using all the different skills that you have in your community to bring about change. But it starts with believing you can do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why fighting the mental battles that hinder you and that keep you from acting. That's the biggest thing. You have to be willing to get in the fight. And so that's why I say, I don't know who has the feedback here. I think that's still, yeah, that's, but you have to be willing to get in the fight. And that's why I say that every voice matters. That's why I appreciate this panel, because they bring to us all these different perspectives. And like the Bible says, every joint supplies. um, LaShawn, I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself, and I would like you to speak to the perspective of the mental things that you see. Does the psychological community address the trauma and issues associated with race?
Hello, everyone. My name is LaShawn Johnson. I am working on a PhD in Advanced Human and Behavior Studies. Got a few more semesters left. Thank you, Jesus. I am not an author yet, but I do have a book coming out called Painted Faces, and it talks about that trauma and how we kind of hide behind the mask of what we deal with every day. I can definitely say, especially me being the youngest out of everyone, kind of what we see in this day and age when it comes to mental health and trauma. Every Probably most of the kids that I see, there's some type of trauma there, especially when we talk about racism and we talk about the need for individuality. When we talk about the stage of development and we're thinking about, those teenage years into young adulthood, that's that time of development where kids are learning who they are. They're learning what their truths are, what their values are, what they'll stand for, and honestly, what they'll fall for. And a lot of kids that I see, that is their biggest a lot of their biggest questions is, I want to look like this because I get picked on if I'm not light skinned. I want to look like this because I get picked on because my hair isn't straight. Why isn't my hair long, and why are my curls kinky? Or why can I be thin? Like, no offense to you kids, but to the white girl that's next to me. There are just so many different elements of it and how deep it can go. And it's even deeper than just, for me, the surface area of what you experience in Black and white America. It's honestly what we experience in our homes as well. A lot of my kids and their families are colorists. And if you haven't heard the word before out there in Facebook world, colorism is kind of that hate for your own skin color. A
Light
lot
skin
of
versus dark skin.
families in the Black community have an issue with, oh, I want light skinned kids. I want mixed kids with good hair. I want this specific type of, and don't get me wrong, as far as a person myself, I have no issues with interracial relationships or whatever you decide to do. But as a Black community and as a culture, we have got to stop the stereotyping and stop the stigma and stop that inbred doctrine that if we're not light skinned with good hair, then we're ugly. Or if we're not, I don't know, don't have the perfect shape or whatever, then there's an issue with you. And that's not true. And in the mental health community, that's a lot of things that we fight. It's a lot of things that we deal with. It's trying to redoctrine and thought challenge those ideologies that there's something wrong with you just because you might be dark skinned or just because your hair might be short and kinky or whatever. You have to accept your beauty for what it is.
So do you think
I think that's so funny because I came along during the time of Black Power. And so I was embarrassed to be light skinned. And I made sure I married a jet black man so that my children would not be light skinned. I'm like, wow, this is like opposites.
now isn't that something?
Yeah,
And that speaks to how crazy and how mentally exhausting and taxing racism is, that you make life decisions, you make choices with that in mind
yeah.
first.
Being a hairstylist, that's such a big thing. Like the hair, people don't understand how much black people get this, black women and especially get discriminated because of their hair. Like even me being a hairstylist and having both my daughter have natural hair and stuff, like you do think about that when they're going to interview or they're going somewhere, just the hair alone is enough. Like my daughter have really thick, big hair. So if she should go in her natural state, just that alone can keep her from progressing, you know? And I've worked in salon where people they don't do black hair, and they'll tell you. And then there's another big issue of interracial mixed kids, because there's a lot of mixed kids that come and they have curly hair and they really hate their hair for the most part. A lot of them really hate because they're, especially if the mom is white and she don't take the time to learn about it and stuff. So it's a totally different care. And, there's so many comments and stuff, but it sounds simple as to say it's the hair, but it's a big part of, and it's a big part of Black girls' self-esteem. It's a big part of Black girls feeling like they're pretty, feeling like, they're equal. And it really does tear them down a lot emotionally wise, self-esteem wise. So it sounds simple as a simple thing as hair, but the and then the good hair, bad hair thing, the way. So one of the things I try to educate people in is I really want us to stop saying ugly things about your hair is kinky, it's nappy. It's all of those are all ugly terminology, and we use it to describe ourselves, and we teach our kids, and our kids are growing up looking at them. And that's the worst thing, especially for a child, to look at yourself and not like what you see. So I think we have to learn too to relearn, redirect our thing. But it's a big thing. It's a major thing. And this is one last thing. So I was working at the salon, and this white lady was there. Well, she's a stylist too, and I was doing this little girl hair, and the mom is white, the little girl is mixed, of course the father is black. And so the stylist come over and she's like, talking to the mom about the little girl and the hair and stuff. And she has a mixed granddaughter, and she was telling her, we were hoping that she would have come out with more of a straight hair. Instead, she come out with a conger hair. And I was like, did this lady trying to say the N word, or did she just watch Roots? I don't know what's going on at this point. But she meant it. So imagine, and I know she loved her granddaughter in her way, but imagine what she's inputted in that child. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Yeah.
One thing, if I could add about that, is the fact that racism is something that's learned. And I think that paying attention to the mental health aspect of that, and we touched on the desire to want to fit in, and desire to want to excel, and the desire to want to be desired. And we need to take into account, why is it so easy for generation after generation to continue to have to deal with racism? Because I can remember watching people storm the Capitol, or seeing different comments on Facebook and thinking, how could the person think that way? And I think it was you, Dr. Chloe, who said, you're benefiting in some way, right? You're benefiting in some way. So on the one side, if we're saying that your hair is kinky, and I purposely wore my hair natural today for this conversation, and or your skin is too dark, or this, that, and the third. But there's also someone on the other hand who's being elevated because your skin is so beautiful, porcelain white, lily white. Your skin is so fair. Your hair is so straight. And I think that we have to remember that this is a learned behavior. And I don't want anybody watching this to absorb this in a negative way as to, trying to say, well, I don't do that. That's not my story. That's not me. It is all of us. You're looking at me right now. It took a lot of energy for me to decide to show up this way. And it's because I was taught just like everyone else was taught. And I want to bring this to the fact that this is an international conversation. I purposely wore my kente cloth print because I'm Nigerian and Panamanian, and this is colorism and was brought up a little bit earlier. It's a very real conversation in many different cultures, in Asian cultures, in African cultures, in American cultures, in European cultures. We're all participating in this. So I want to celebrate you for listening to this conversation and being here with us. If you're watching this on the replay, put replay in the comments. And remember that this isn't something to feel guilty about. It's something to be aware of so that we can move forward one person at a time.
Another thing I think we really have to deal with the schools that are with the 75% white faculty, and a lot of things that they say to our young children that make them feel like they are different. I remember my son, in fact, we were just talking about this last week. When he was 3, he came home talking about he wished he was white. And I asked him why. And he said, because it just seems like I would be treated better. And so even though he's only 3 years old and at a daycare center, he can already tell that there is a difference. So we have to really be careful about what the adults around our children are teaching our children about themselves and about about Black people.
That's right.
Can
That's
I?
exactly right.
Yeah. Can I just say?
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was actually going to move on to the next topic. So do you want to just add a final thought?
Okay. Yeah, no, I really wanted to add something about the education system, because I came to the States when I was 10, 2 months before my 11th birthday. So I went to school in Jamaica up till the 3rd grade. And I went to school in New York at 4th grade. And it was complete shocker. It was just a totally different experience. And so over the years, at one point I had custody of my 2 brothers, and one of them wasn't really able to read. He was in the 4th grade at the time. So I had to fight with Boston school system. And now having kids. So, I kept thinking about what's the difference with the school system. And I really feel like it's the expectation thing. And it's exactly what Miss Cleo said. I feel like I come from one of the most impoverished, worst area in Jamaica. But when we went to school, I felt like they had expectation for us. And at no point did I ever feel like my color. I was very aware that we were poor, but I never felt like my color was going to be the thing that would stop me. I always knew that it was money, and I understood that education was going to be the thing that could possibly change it for me. But when I came to New York, I heard teachers telling kids like, I don't care if you learn, I get paid regardless. And I heard students calling teachers B and stuff. And for me, that was like, that was not heard of, even in the poorest part, So over the years, it's something that I really, really think about, and I'm very passionate about. I see. So, I'm going to get off it real quick. But growing up, coming here and growing up and not having my papers and not being able to, because I wanted to be an attorney, that was my dream. So not being able to go to school and stuff like that. One of the things that I always puzzle me is why Black American in particular was not taking advantage of school like they're supposed to. But then I realized, because this is something that when you're not able to do it, I mean, you can't understand the depression and the hurt and and all that, it gives. And then to watch somebody that you think have the opportunity, but they're not taking advantage of it. But I realized is that you could provide or look like you're providing opportunities, and there are different ways to make people not want to. You see, it's ways to make people not want to. So, like my daughter go to school, kindergarten, she's like, school is so boring. No kid at kindergarten should say that. But it's because kids have a sense of feeling. They can feel stuff. They don't have the articulation to say what it is, but they feel that teacher don't expect nothing of them. They feel that they're not loved. You know what I mean? Somebody in there might not say, "Oh, you're Black and I don't want you," but it's the feeling, it's the treatment, and something is not right. So that's what I feel like is the big difference. Is for everything I could come up with is the expectation and I think the big difference here in America is that, because my two younger brother was born here, the two that have custody, so they're in their 30s, is the fact that they make the kids, they give them so much excuse as to why they can't do it, right? It's like, you're from this poor neighborhood, right? That's why people have to be careful, even at the application that you fill out for your kids to go to school. You don't realize that you're setting your kids up to be discriminated against. It's the address that you live in the project, or that means that you're not going to be doing so well, Right. Oh, your parents is Black, you're poor, you're this. So we're embedded. So by the time the kids reach a certain age, they've already been told so many reasons why they're not going to succeed. And the biggest part of it is that they're Black. So why take advantage of what? What am I taking advantage of? Because I'm coming out, graduating, and I can't even read the application for the job, right? So that's something that's really passionate, and I just wanted to share that with you.
Wow, that's definitely a testimony, and it's something to really think about. Just coming from different areas, how racism is so heavily, it's so systemic here. It's crazy. So the next word I'm going to throw out, and this for everybody, is privilege. It's privilege, and I'll start with Keith.
Thank you.
Not to put you in the corner,
I can't imagine why you would start with me. I mean,
You just wrote something about it.
Yeah. Well, no, you're exactly right. And this is the thing that I struggle with, is helping, as I said, a lot of times trying to help white Christians understand, even just understanding what white privilege is. Most of the time, the reaction that I get from white people when I try to talk about white privilege, is either denying that it exists or immediately being offended. But in other words, you're blaming this on me. No, I'm really not blaming it on you. I'm not even saying that the truth is, most of the time they're completely oblivious to all of the things that prop up white privilege. So step one is just showing them, hey, here's what we're talking about when we talk about white privilege. The ways in which you never have to worry about the kinds of things that people of color do have to worry about. And many that you guys have even shared already on this call already. I promise you, as a white man, I've never had to worry about my hair looking natural, whether or not I went to a job interview. I've never worried about, my complexion. Those questions never come up to me. And so, there are just certain things that I'm oblivious to. And so number one is understanding that, yes, as a white person in America, you do enjoy privileges that frankly, you personally have nothing to do with. You didn't create it for yourself. However, you do enjoy those privileges nevertheless. And understanding the fact that, number one, you do, is a huge, huge step. And then once you understand that you do, again, without being offended, we're not trying to blame it on you. But here's the thing. Once you are aware of the privilege that you enjoy, that other people do not enjoy, if your response is to continue to deny it and to do nothing about it, well, now in a way, kind of it is on you, okay? Because now you do know about it, and we did point it out to you, and you're not oblivious to it, and you're still not doing much about it. I think that's really where I would love to see a conversation in white circles on that issue, number one. I think once white people can, first of all, just have eyes to see, right? Do you have eyes to see? Do you have ears to hear? Can you recognize that? And there are many examples. I mean, December, you did a wonderful job pointing out some of those examples, right? And I don't even know how anybody could have watched the storming of the Capitol building and not had, at least for a second, the thought in your head, what if those were Black people? How different would that reaction have been? I mean, come on. Everyone else tell you, there would have been a drastically different reaction to this very moment. There would have been a huge difference of reaction of the way people have responded. And the temptation is just to say, well, they're blowing off steam, you excuse it in certain ways. And again, that in itself is an example of white privilege, the way you react. So, privilege is a real problem. And it's something that I would love to help white people recognize that it does exist. And then once you recognize that it exists, understanding that there are things you could do to help sort of create equity, as Cleo was saying, which I love that picture. Because again, it's brief. I'll be done in a second. But here's the thing, that's the reality. This is just the reality. Like December, you pointed out, right? Who gave women the right to vote? It wasn't women, it was men, right? And again, so in other words, the people who have the power are the ones who are going to have to let go of some of it if we're going to achieve this level, right? And so it's never going to happen if one, you don't recognize you got it and others don't. And two, especially again, if I'm going to speak to Christians, and again, I've always felt like this is my audience, if I'm going to talk to people who think that they're following Jesus, I would urge you to do what he called us to do, which was to look at people who don't have influence, who don't have power, who don't have the things that they need, and work to do all we can to make sure that they receive it, that they have it. And I don't think you can call yourself a follower of Jesus if you don't care about those things, and if you're not moving in that direction. Real briefly, there's a really fascinating concept that it's found in Judaism, and it's this idea of shalom. We tend, in our English Bibles, the word is peace, and that's wrong. And I think we're not thinking of it the right way when we read the word peace in English. We really need to think of shalom, because this is what they were thinking of. This is what Jesus was thinking of when he talked about, I give you peace, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives, this kind of a thing. Again, it's not just the absence of conflict. Shalom, in the Jewish sense, was this idea of it's a very community-minded concept. It's a concept that says if everyone in the community has enough food and clothing and shelter and prominence and status and all this freedom, but one person doesn't, no one has shalom until that person has shalom. Until that person experiences the same shalom that we all experience, no one has it. And that's the level of what we're talking about, right? So, hey, white people, you enjoy a whole lot of privilege. You enjoy a whole lot of power. This world you were born into caters to you in ways you don't even realize. So you can't ever really have true peace, true shalom, as Jesus wants you to have, until everyone around you can enjoy that same level of shalom that you enjoy.
Okay, great.
Yes.
I want to,
So that's
know what Javon and Marcus have to say about privilege. I know it's crazy as a Black man, being in the workplace, seeing so much privilege go on, and you felt like if you were at a job interview, they picked somebody white over you, and you felt that. It wasn't that, you just automatically assumed, but you felt like, what is your perspective on that?
Well, I felt that in my instance, and it's working at, because literally at a job at when they had, this was around the time of Obama first elected, they had like where they had to cut back all the large number on my shift. Coincidentally, them were black, and this is a job where we work. It made no sense. And so circle back to what we're talking about with privilege. To me, like advantages. Speaking also from the has gone to both predominantly white as well as predominantly black schools, I know there's a vast difference because
Black Phoenix, I think you're
when I
breaking up a bit. I would love to be able to hear what you're saying, but it's breaking up.
wait, can you hear me now?
That's
Am I still
much
breaking
better.
up?
Thank you. Yes, that's much better.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I was just saying, speaking as someone who predominantly white as well as predominantly black schools, there is a difference in the education that I've experienced because there are things that I in the predominantly white schools I wouldn't have known to the predominantly black schools. There's things when you circle back to stocks that aren't common knowledge in the community that I've grown up. It's not really a matter of not wanting to. It's just a matter of not having the knowledge to advance. So it all circles back to every point that was made during the discussion that we've had.
So I've had some interesting experience around kind of seeing privilege play out in real time. In a previous job, I worked for a youth serving organization that did mentoring. And we are the kind of standard model for what we did was white, wealthier people mentoring poorer, blacker kids. And we were constantly having to deal with these issues of privilege and them understanding the deeper dynamics behind what was going on. I'm having a similar experience now where the people that I work with are predominantly older, whiter, more affluent, sometimes holding multiple degrees. And, now they're expected to work collaboratively with people who are predominantly African American, working blue collar jobs in some cases. And I've had people say things to me when I talk to them about joining the union. Why would I want to be in a union with bus drivers and garbage men? And, I'm saying, well, I'm thinking to myself, those bus drivers and those garbage men are making more money than you are because they're organized and they're actually getting things done. So I've kind of I've seen privilege play out in a number of different ways. But as I've thought about it over the course of American history, what became clear to me is that white privilege is paid for with white silence and compliance. It's back the blue until the blue is standing in the way, and then it's beat their head in with the fire extinguisher. It is, we can see throughout history that as soon as white people cross the line and stand in solidarity with, not even necessarily with people of color, but just against the status quo, they are now pariahs. We're seeing that thing play out right now with the Republican Party, where if somebody doesn't support Trump, they're subject to death threats. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the real battlefield of the mind or the real battlefield for racism and privilege is definitely in the mind, because privilege is a mindset. It is, but it's also a transparency. We talking about education and what are people learning. A 50-foot billboard featuring a skinny blonde white model is a kind of message. It's a kind of education about what is beautiful, and if it doesn't fit that, then what is that message? If you don't look like that, what does that message say to you? I guess there's a lot of things to be said about privilege. It's the opposite of power in many ways. That privilege is something that is given by somebody that holds power in a particular kind of way. But I want to push back against the idea that women didn't get the right to vote, men gave it to them, or enslaved peoples didn't free themselves, a white person freed them. There was no option. Women didn't get the right to vote. They always had the right to vote. They did have to. It required force to be recognized, enslaved people were, they were always free. They had to be freed in this context, but there was no other option. The people always have the power. The systems that be may not recognize that power, but that is the work, is to help people understand that privilege and power are not the same thing, and that but power doesn't exist until you use it. Like, this is my writer's mind kind of going right now. I feel like there's 10 different ways to go into this conversation, but those are but that's the hard thing sometimes, is to understand, like, is to witness privilege in action, and to just have to swallow it and be like, there it goes again. I mean, and that's what June 6th or January 6th was. That was privilege on display.
One thing I think is really important is that when you do see that you have some sort of privilege, is to use it, because like I said, the space that I'm in, I'm trying to create equity when it comes to women business owners. A lot of the conversations that I have is with people who don't look like me. And, it's because of their recognition of their privilege to make these things available to others. And I think there's a lot of power in that, and being able to recognize that you always have some level of access or skill. And what was just shared is so important, because it is a trick of the mind for you to believe that someone is better than you in any way. It is a trick of the mind. God created us all equal in many ways, with different skills that complement one another. And sometimes the big power that we have is simply to open up our mouths and to speak. And I think it's so poignant and poetic that we're having this conversation, and each one of us are writers. We have the audacity to create our own reality with our words and to share messages with our writings. And that is something that I would hope that more and more people understand, that they have the power to do that. And you have the power to stand up as a prototype for others, because there's somebody who's watching you, who is learning how to step into their power based on the things that you do with your privilege and with your courage.
I wanted to say something about privilege, right? Because I think for me, it's something that we need to teach our kids. Because, I try to tell my kids, you are entitled. Just like anybody else feel like they're entitled to a good education. They're entitled to good health care. They're entitled to live in a good neighborhood. They're entitled to be safe. They're entitled to get protection from the police officer. They're entitled. So for me, I need them to know that, just like they feel like they have the privilege, you have the privilege. And so the thing is, the saying over they have the Karen and stuff like that. My daughter will mess with me and say, Mom, you're acting like a Karen right now. Because I'm going to call, I'm going to complain, I'm going to talk, I'm going to make noise to make sure my daughters get the privilege too, right? I'm not going to have them exclude my child. So if they're going to get tired of me and stuff. So I don't know who just said that. It's a mindset. It's a mindset, because that's all it is. Like they said, power and privilege is two different things. So if you tell yourself too that you're not entitled, or what make this person feel like they have this just because they have the white skin? No, you have the same rights too. But a lot of time is because we don't feel empowered to go out there and complain. And it starts with our kids, because when your kid is in school and they're not treating your kids right, or they're not making sure your kids get the education that they're supposed to, that's where the privilege mindset come in. You said, no, my child is entitled to get what they deserve, what any other kid in that school is supposed to get, And I think when we put that in our kids' mind, not as a nasty entitlement thing, but as no, you have the right. You have any right, because we were all brought to this earth with the same rights, right? It doesn't matter what money say, what status it puts you in. The fact is you still have the right to go and seek what better. So this is a perfect example, right? Like in New York, there's a big transition going on with the neighborhoods and stuff. And when the blacks are in these apartments, they don't fix them up. The landlords don't go in and fix it up, and it's all slum and stuff. But as soon as whites are starting to move in, and they're fixing it up and stuff. And I have a couple of people that I know live there. And I'm like, listen, no, you guys have to go because you have that privilege too. You have to go to whoever it is, go to the mayor, go to whoever, right? We don't just sit and, so what we've been taught is that we're not entitled to the same privilege that
Absolutely.
they are, and we are entitled to the same privilege. And my thing is, if you feel like you're privileged, I feel the same way too.
That's right. That's right. That's one of the reasons that I believe your voice is so powerful in literature, in art, and whatever you're doing. Because with racism, uh, Black people somewhere along the way learned to not speak up about it and just to kind of accept it. Therefore, also accepting a level of inferiority. Because it's like if you can't say ouch when someone hurts you, if you feel like this person disrespected me or this person overlooked me, and we'll have to say, okay, well, we'll just, don't worry about them, we'll just pour our energy into ourselves, or uh we'll pray about it, or we'll do this or we'll do that. But you should be able to say this is not right and follow through until you get to some type of resolution. But often we deal with being faced with losing our job, or being labeled, or so my question to everyone is, how do you deal with the opposition when you speak up about this very simple thing? How do you deal with the opposition and continue to move forward? I know that a lot of you guys have some controversial work out there, so I know that you face a good bit of that other voice.
I think you got to find your joy and live in it. I think that that is one of the things that has been denied to us in a lot of different ways, is just be able to enjoy something. And I think that is even if it I think a good example is Afrofuturism, which is science fiction that imagines a world of just Black people in the future, wherever they happen to be. And not necessarily and post-apocalyptic science fiction or something like that, but something that can allow the imagination to be free. And I think that's the most important thing is, I think now we're coming into an age of self-care and understanding that. But I reflect back on a lot of family traditions that were very simple but very powerful. Coming together around the holidays, celebrating, a harvest, season, as it were, those communal moments. But I think it's really important to in small ways and in big ways, is to revel in things that simply bring you joy, because if there is not, there has to be another side to it all. For all the hardships that we face, even simple moments at home with your family, or taking a road trip, or traveling someplace new. Some of the things that were denied to us were ways to experience joy, and to revel in that joy, I think, is one of the most powerful affirmations of, what are we fighting for? It is to be able to, go to a museum and enjoy beautiful works of art. So I think there's a lot of ways to experience joy, but cultivating that and caring for ourselves has got to be a critical element of surviving the hardship.
I think on the opposite end of that too, when we talk about the education system and we talk about our teens and our young adults, is the fact that these kids they have more common sense than we give them credit for, and they're in a environment that I've seen so many times where you might have a teacher who is making racial slurs to you or treating you differently just because of, you know, your economic status or what side of the tracks you live on. And these kids they have the power to speak up for themselves. They want to put their voice out there that you can't treat me any differently. But then what can they do when you have a teacher in your classroom who doesn't think much of you, when you have teachers down the hallway who really don't give a damn about what you do, and then you have administrators who could care less? We've seen so many times in the news where kids have been kicked out of school just because they didn't fit the way that they're supposed to look for how their school's criteria fall. Or, you know, a lot of these kids, and then when you, like he was saying, when we take these things home, of course the school is going to make it look like these kids are just being a nuisance in class, or they're the class clown, or the stereotype of all black people are angry, so this kid must just have an attitude problem, that's why he can't get his work done. And really, it's kind of what Miss Cleo talked about before, is having that fire to speak out. And how I think the most important thing for our kids is how can we teach them how to express themselves the right way, so that they're not being disrespectful to their teachers, or they're not being labeled as the one in the class that keeps up the drama. And I think it's especially in the Black community, and as parents, I don't have children, but I see this often. It's just, how can we empower our kids to know that their voice is important, especially when they are up against adults who think less of them just because of their skin color, or because they're friends with Katie across the hallway and you're a bad influence on Katie, you know. There's so many different elements that can go to, as far as just making sure that they're empowered as well.
I think another critical piece is being spiritual. I mean, that was what the Black community always got their strength from, a strong and close relationship with God. And you didn't feel this sense of helplessness and powerlessness, because you actually had this feeling that God was on your side and not on theirs. And so you know, when Daddy just looked the guy in the eye and told him, "You can't shoot me, you can't kill me unless God gives permission," that man could look at my daddy and know that my daddy really believed that. He really felt that. And he was standing on that fact that you know, shoot me if you can. And so that kind of boldness, and like, even when they first got the right to vote and they were burning a cross in front of the house of every person who had registered to vote. And so they're calling my dad and they're like, "Oh, we're so scared. You know, they're burning a cross. They're burning a cross." And you can tell where they are, because they started at the top of town and burned a cross on down. And we lived at the bottom of town. And so, you know, if we're sitting around the house and Daddy is joking, like, you know, "I think I'm going to go hide in the ditch and shoot him in the kneecaps. Then I'll know who was under that robe." You know, when you know God like that, you know, like, what you're doing is what he told you to do, and I'm going to be successful at that. It gives you a whole different way of approaching things. So all this confusion going on, you know, we meet every Wednesday night. We have our prayer service. That's why Trump's all his attorneys quit this week, because we've been praying for that. We've been praying for that, all that, since last Wednesday. And so, you know, you got to know your source. And when you know, and then it just changes how you approach life and how you approach people trying to put you down. Okay, time up. Thank you. I got excited.
I want to say something real quick. I was thinking back when my brother Finksy said something about when we're talking about privilege, about he mentioned that I mentioned that white men had to give women the right to vote. It was a right that they had, but it wasn't a right that was recognized. And about this, how do you move forward? Let me deal with this real quick, and I'm trying to run through it as quickly as I can. In 1846, in the Right Reverend Sister Cleo, who just took us to church, can attest to this. In 1846, Dred and Harriet Scott filed lawsuits in the St. Louis Circuit Court against Irene Emerson for their freedom. Okay. Mm-hmm. And because they believed that they were supposed to be free, which they should have been free. And you might know that they lost that on a technicality. They filed again in 1850 and they won. Okay. They won. But then Irene appealed that case, and the court, the Missouri Supreme Court, reversed that. So I want you to understand what's happening here. Someone is saying, I'm a human being, I should be free. And it's up to the courts, the systems that be, to say yes or no to that, even though, of course, they are in God, made in the image of God, human beings, okay, humanity, the humanity of Blackness. Yes, they are. But it was up to the court to say so. And in 1852, they reversed the judgment of the lower court and they were enslaved again. I'm trying that their humanity is being tossed back and forth in the court. Okay. And then in 1853, they filed a federal lawsuit in the United States Circuit Court for the District of Missouri. Okay. And in 1854, the federal court heard that and ruled against them again. Okay, what I'm talking about, everything we've been talking about tonight, privilege, the battlefield of the mind. And in December 1854, they appealed this case again to the United States Supreme Court. Okay, and the case began, and you all know that it was a major case at the time because things could rise or fall based on this case. And on March 6, 1857, and I am by no means a historian of any sort, but I think this is significant concerning everything that we're talking about. On March 6, 1857, they lost in the highest court of the land. And Chief Justice Roger Taney came down with the decision that said all people of African descent, free or enslaved, don't matter, were not United States citizens. I'm talking about privilege. And therefore had no right to sue in federal court. The bigger part was that he said there is not any right, basically, that a Black person has that the white man should have to be bothered with. Okay, period. Free, slave, doesn't matter. And because you're not a citizen, now, mind you, I've had access to the court all the way up to the highest court, but I'm not a citizen. And I get all the way up to the highest court, and the highest court says it doesn't matter if you're a slave or you're free, because you're not a citizen of this country. Just like cows are not citizens. Just like pigs are not citizens, just like chickens are not citizens. So it doesn't really matter what your status is. There's no right that you have that we have to acknowledge. And this is privilege. Not that I'm not free, not that I'm not beautiful, not that I'm not worthy, not that I don't have equity, but that the powers that be will acknowledge that. That's the privilege. And so what happened to him and his wife? They had to continue in slavery after having been freed and enslaved and freed and enslaved. And they had to continue in slavery until this woman married Calvin Chaffee. I don't know how to pronounce his name, U.S. Congressman who also happened to be an abolitionist. And when he found out that his wife still owned the most infamous slave, okay, when he found out, he sold, he didn't free him, he sold him. This is privilege, the privilege to buy and sell a human. He sold him to his family, back to the original owners. And then that family freed them. Okay. And then that same judge, what's so serendipitous about this is that same judge is the one that swore in Abraham Lincoln. Now, why did I even say all of that? Because yes, I have a right to exist. And yes, I'm a human being. And yes, I should have access to what everyone has access to. And yes, my chocolate skin is just as beautiful as Keith's fair skin. And yes, my hair, I should be able to wear. Let me take this off. I should be able to wear my dreadlocks and not be looked over for a job, just like my sister should be able to wear her hair straight if she wants to do that. Anything my hair can do, I should be able to do it. But privilege says no and yes, go and stop, come this far, but no further. Mm-hmm. And it's people that recognize, I'm learning that a lot of people can equate privilege with poverty. And so they say, I came up poor, I struggled, my mom was on EBT, da, 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 da. I don't have no privilege. And they don't understand, if you walk out your house and you don't have to consider whether or not the world will move differently for you just because you're Black, that's the only privilege if you don't recognize any other one. And it's a matter of, after you become aware of that in your mind, we're talking about the battlefield of the mind. After you become aware of that in your mind, it's a matter of the heart, whether or not you accept that truth. Mm-hmm. Because out of the heart flow the issues of life. That's what the book of Proverbs said. And so what you are witnessing even now today with all these people that want to string up Liz Cheney and whoever else, you are witnessing people who profess to know a God that they have not ever even met, let alone believe in. And that is privilege.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
To be able to say, I'm human and I'm free, and I don't give a damn about it because you have no rights that I am obligated to acknowledge.
Wow.
Now, let the church say amen. That's all I got to say.
Amen.
Amen. I mean, can we pass the collection plate around?
That was
I'm listening to you, and that's why I love history, right? Because we learn so much from it, right? But we as human are so puzzling, right? Because we keep repeating and repeating, and for me, the biggest point of all of this is that my grandkids, because my kids is already going through it, right? All of the kids right now are facing this. And I'm thinking, we had all this march and all of that so people could drink at the same water fountain, right? And now it's like, who's drinking at a water fountain, really? Like people fight and fight so they could get on the bus, so they could keep people off the bus. And now people barely want to take the bus. So it's like we are not, my point is that people are fighting to hold on to things that in the next couple of years is going to be like, it's not even important. But just the power to have the power to say, I can stop you. Just to feel that empowerment to say, I can make you not achieve. I can make you not. When she was talking about the school, my passion is, and the things that I really want to do is to be an advocate, an education advocate. Because I realize that every kid in America, especially every minority kid, need an advocate. And so one of the problems is that it should be their parents, but we assume that every child have a parent, or some child have parents that are on drugs or, going through mental illness, all of that. But in the school system, they need an advocate. They need someone to go in and speak up for them, to make sure that they're getting that privilege to. Make sure that they're getting what they're entitled to. And so the whole point of us doing all of this is so that our kids don't have to come and repeat the same thing. right? Hoping that we will learn. And, the good thing about January the 6th and the good thing about Trump um, disaster terms is that everything happened in real time, because we don't understand even how privileged we are to be able to do this in the middle of a pandemic. When I was little in Jamaica, the only way I could hear from my mother is if she write a letter, right? So the good thing is that the world is seeing, everybody's seeing, it's there. So there's no more denying, there's no more excuses. It's there. But we have to, we have to change it. If not for ourselves, and maybe we shouldn't even be thinking about ourselves, but we have to change it for our kids. We have to, this is the moment. If we settle, and what happened with the Black community a lot is that they get riled up, and then we get excited because there's a Camilla and there's a Joe, and we settle back. We settle, right? And I want you guys to be aware that even though they're upset about Joe Biden, you best believe they're more upset about Camilla and the possibility of having a Black woman as president. And as my young lady say in her poem, peace, quietness is not peace.
That's right.
Right? So even though we're not hearing much, don't mistake it. Remember, there's a lot going on. There's a plan going on. And so we have to be just as aggressive in our thing and stop laid back, because every time we lay back, we put it back for our kids. Like we all here, some of us have young kids. And if we don't stop, our kids, my kid is going to be 47 having the same discussion.
That's right.
Right? So I'm just hoping that we'll learn. We'll learn. And it starts with the education system, because those people that you see are a product of the education system. Don't get it twisted. What you see, when you learn that Christopher Columbus discovered America, you're learning that 2 plus 2 is not 4. So you're learning wrong information. And if you start learning wrong information, you're already being programmed. You're being programmed, and people don't know how programmed they are from this education system. And that's why it's important for us to go out and learn, and relearn, because we've learned a lot of the wrong information. So now we have to go out and seek it so we could teach our kids, because the school is not educating them. The school is indoctrinating them. And that's what you see.
And just to kind of wrap up on that end too, we talk about just the barriers that we have in the education system, but more than the education system, in our blue and our white collar jobs, we offer all of these trainings on cultural diversity and how we need to be more culturally sensitive to the population that we serve. But honestly, even in those pursuits, you can train 200 people, but maybe only 40% of those people actually care to be there. So, it's of course, there's so many things that we can do on the outside to try to motivate that change and elicit that conversation and get the ball rolling in certain areas. But, still in that Jim Crow era of people, and those people who have raised more people, we have a lot of people who just absolutely do not care about the cultural differences and the cultural barriers that our kids are facing, and even us as adults are still facing.
Well, guys, oh my goodness. The issues with race is a conversation that is going to have to continue. One of my questions is going to be, even if in a future, even in one of those Afrofuturism futures where race was not an issue, I still believe that this conversation would need to be had, because if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. And I know a lot of white people and other groups get so tired of this conversation. They're like, okay, I even saw it in a vegan Facebook group that I'm in. But that just speaks to the reach of the issue. So what's important, and what I want everyone to take away from this event tonight, is that you always, always, always use your voice against racism. Never be quiet. Never just let it bring you down or make you feel that your voice doesn't matter. In every space that you see it, call it and deal with it. And that's just what I want to leave. I'm gonna do. Anybody have any final words before I just close it out? For this event for this.
I just want to say thank you. Yeah, somebody else said thank you too. You always create a platform, for us to show up in our true, authentic selves. And so we get to express ourselves without boundaries, without parameters, without the behind the scenes saying do or do not say this, but you create a platform for us to genuinely share our perspectives, so that we can come from our own places of strength to educate or empower other people about issues that matter, to us. So I just want to say thank you for creating this platform.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I love all of you from my heart. And I'll just let you guys out.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised.